Okay, today we're going to be learning Shabbat Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph. Today's daf is sponsored by Dr. Robin Zeiger and Professor Jonathan Ben Ezra in memory of Robin's mother, Helen Chana Zeiger, whose yahrzeit is today. We're going to start with the top of Kuf Chaf Aleph, but we have to review a little bit of what happened in Kuf Chaf. Someone mentioned this right before shiur, so maybe I'll just explain this idea of somebody writing on his skin. We don't mean someone who tattooed. We mean someone who wrote with some sort of, ink or something on one's skin. How did we get to this? We were talking about the Mishnah. In the Mishnah, there's a machloket between Rabbi Yossi and Tanakama about gram kiboy. Can one put out the fire indirectly? Is indirect putting out of the fire considered a problem, or is it allowed? And then we brought sources that seem to show that Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah says gram kiboy is forbidden, and Tanakama says it's allowed. And then we brought sources that seem to say that they would have the reverse, that their approaches were the opposite. And then the second source we brought to discuss, to bring a contradiction, was someone who wrote God's name, which again is a very strange scenario why someone would do this. I can't really explain why. And maybe it's just a purely theoretical case where somebody wrote God's name on their body. How did they go to the mikvah, right? Because they're going to wipe out the name of God. So we said, according to Tanakama, they put a reed over it, kind of like a bandage over it, and they go in the mikveh that way. And according to Rabbi Yossi, you can just go in without worrying about it. So the Gemara said, well, that seems to be exact opposite. Here, Rabbi Yossi's not worried about gram kiboy, and Tanakama is worried, and that's why he wants you to put something over the name of God. But then the Gemara rejects that and says it can't possibly be, because if it was put on very well, which would be the only way you could prevent it, that would be a chatzitza. It would be a separation between the body and the water and going in the mikveh. That can't be. They say the issue must be that we're concerned with that the name of God should not see a person's naked body. That's the problem. In which case, though, we say both of them then should say you cover it with the gemi. And then they say, well, one holds that you can just cover it with your hand. Put your hand over it, and that's not a problem. And they say, no, that would be a problem because maybe you'll move your hand by accident. So in the end, they conclude, and that's where we ended yesterday's shiur, that in the end, we say both of them actually require some sort of reed to be put on top of it. The machloket between them is, what if, and we'll start with the last 5 words on the page, on Kuf Chaf Amubet, lahadure agemi. What we mean is, let's say you can't find anything to put on top of it. So now, do we allow you to go in with your hand covering it? And then we just say, well, look, be extra careful and try to, we don't worry about it. Or not. So it depends what you hold in a different issue. Rabbanan savrit tefillah b'zman mitzvah. Tefillah b'zman lav mitzvah. Umahadlinan. Since the rabbis hold, it's not so critical. And this is based on a different machlok. It's not so critical to go to the mikveh exactly at the time that you become pure and can go to the mikveh. That's where you theoretically would become pure, and therefore you don't have to go to the mikveh exactly then, which means push it off. Wait until you find a gemi. Better to do that than accidentally to remove your hand and end up, right? We have a few different concerns here. So he says, since tefillah b'zmana isn't a mitzvah, it's okay. You can go to the mikveh later. Therefore, better to wait till you find a gemi so that your naked body doesn't get seen by the name of God. But Rabbi Yossi savar tefillah b'zmana mitzvah v'lo mahadlinan. He holds tefillah b'zmana is a mitzvah. You have to go exactly at the right time. In which case, we say we don't make you find a gemi. Better to go to the mikvah on time. So now the Gemara says, is that really true? V'savar Rabbi Yossi tefillah b'zmana mitzvah. Does he really hold that? The hatanya, and now we're going to get into this braita about going to the mikvah. Hazav v'hazavav v'mitzorav v'mitzorat bo'el nidav v'tmeimet tfilatam bayom. Now we're going to talk about all sorts of people that have to go to the mikvah, and they go in general during the day. And even if, we're going to say, Rashi tells us that braita zo eitzel Yom Kippurim shnuya uba tosefta di Yoma. This is in the Tosefta of Yoma, and it's talking about in Yom Kippur. So all these people, their mitzvah is to go to the mikvah during the day, and therefore they go to the mikvah even on Yom Kippur, right? Which would show what? Tefillah b'zmana is mitzvah, although we'll see maybe not. Nida v'yoledet tfilatam balayla. They're the only 2 exceptions to the rule where they go to the mikveh at night. This is because the nida needs 7 full days before she can go to the mikveh. So only after that does she go to the mikveh at nighttime. And a yoledet is there's a hekesh between a yoledet and a nida, and therefore they say yoledet is like nida. Someone who gives birth also goes to the mikveh at night. So now we're going to say, if you're a Baal Keri, then you can go to the mikveh anytime during that day on Yom Kippur. Let's say you became a Baal Keri sometime during the day of Yom Kippur. Whatever time it is, you can go to the mikveh. What's the issue? Well, the other issue you have to know is that a Baal Keri can't daven. Okay, there was Takanat Ezra that a Baal Keri can't daven. Because a Baal Keri can't daven, well, it's Yom Kippur, you have to daven. So we allow you to go to the mikveh all day long. Now, they say, Rabbi Yossi Omer, he disagrees and he says, Mina mincha ulamala eino tzarich litbol. Once it's mincha time and you've already davened mincha, then if you become a Baal Keri, you don't go to the mikveh. Why? Well, according to Tanakama, tefillah b'zman mitzvah. If you became a Baal Keri in the afternoon, well, you have to go to the mikveh right away. So go to the mikveh because tefillah b'zman is mitzvah. Rabbi Yossi, who we held, said tefillah b'zman a mitzvah, here says tefillah b'zman is not a mitzvah because what? Because he says here, since it's Yom Kippur, we don't really want you washing on Yom Kippur. It's forbidden. Now, if tefillah b'zman is a mitzvah, then that overrides the issur of washing on Yom Kippur because you're not actually washing for the purpose of washing. You're going to the mikveh, we allow you. But when you don't need it, meaning because tefillah b'zman is not a mitzvah. If tefillah b'zman was a mitzvah, then you would need to go to the mikveh right then. But since the only purpose is for davening, and you have no more davening left, although we're going to get to this in a minute, it seems a little bit of a problem, and because of what? After mincha, there's still more davening. You still have ne'ilah. Okay, hold off on that for 1 minute. So, but he says, once mincha passes, you've davened mincha, you don't need to go to the mikveh for davening purposes anymore, and therefore, it must be tefillah b'zman isn't a mitzvah. You wait till nighttime. We'd rather you not go on Yom Kippur. So it shows that Rabbi Yossi holds tefillah b'zman is not a mitzvah. So the Gemara answers this by saying, oh, now this is a very interesting way of dealing with it. We always have this issue. In fact, I took a course in university once called Klalei Talmud, which was all about rules in the Gemara. Certain rules like whenever it says Rabbi Elazar, which Rabbi Elazar is it? When it says Rabbi Yossi, which Rabbi Yossi is it? There's books written about this, okay, about what the rules are when it says this, who it's referring to, and who's Rabbi Yossi Stam. So Rabbi Yossi Stam in the Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi ben, or in Tanaitic sources, is Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. So we assume that since we saw Rabbi Yossi, and we saw Rabbi Yossi, we were talking about the same Rabbi Yossi. Comes the Gemara now and says, in fact, it was a different Rabbi Yossi. Hahi Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehudi. The one who talked in the Yom Kippur case, that tefillah b'zman is not a mitzvah, is not the same Rabbi Yossi as by us. It's a different Rabbi Yossi. It's Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, and our Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, and therefore it's not a contradiction. Now this sounds very creative, okay? But the Gemara is going to prove it, because they're going to say, we see Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, da'amar dayat tefillah ba'achrona. In a different case, he holds that tefillah b'zman is not a mitzvah, okay? Before we explain this case, I want to now just go back and finish the issue I opened about ne'ilah. Okay, Rashi points out, he says in Rabbi Yossi Omer min mincha ulamala, he says he can wait ad shetachshach in the middle of that Rashi, v'yitbol, and here he says something very interesting. Again, you have to remember that the way things work nowadays isn't always the way they worked. Yitpalel tfilat arvit utfilat ne'ilah nami. Okay, in other words, he holds, right? There's some people who think the ne'ilah exempted davening Mariv on Motzei Yom Kippur. And he basically says, there you see the ne'ilah could be said at night, and therefore, theoretically, right, you imagine, it sounds crazy to daven ne'ilah after Yom Kippur is over. Right? It seems so weird to us. But apparently, there was an opinion that the ne'ilah could have actually been davened at night, and therefore, we wait until nighttime, even if you've davened mincha, because you don't have to daven ne'ilah, you can daven ne'ilah after Yom Kippur. So anyway, back to our issue. How do we know this Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda? Because there's this crazy case. I'm not going to go into all the details. Anyone who learned Nida with us knows this case. It was a very weird one. There's a woman who miscarries. We don't know exactly when she miscarried. We don't know if she miscarried a boy or a girl. If you miscarry after 40 days, you have to wait to Meilei. Again, there's a lot of information here. I'm not going to get into all the details, but you have to wait 7 days for a boy, 14 days for a female. If you don't know what it is, then you have to be machmir and say maybe it's the 14 days of the female. But the issue, and there's another issue, which is maybe you miscarried during Zava days, in which case you need to wait 7 clean days also. And then you need to go to the mikveh both for Leida, which you go at nighttime after potentially 7 days and 14 days. But since you don't know what day, so every day could be a potential day where you would be the end of the 7 days and then the end of the 14 days. And then you'd have to wait 7 clean days and go after the 7 clean days. And all those days you tovel in the morning and not at nighttime, because for the birth you tovel at night. For the 7 clean days you tovel in the morning. So they get up to this count of possible 35 days where this woman has to, 35 dunks in the mikveh. She has to tovel 35 times according to one of the opinions there, because she has to tovel, because if we say tefillah b'zmana mitzvah, then of course she's forbidden to her husband all that time because maybe she's a zava. But not only that, since tefillah b'zmana is a mitzvah and any of those possible days are days she needs to tovel, so we make her tovel all those times. But and some days even in the morning and the afternoon, depending on what it is, where we're up to in the count. But Rabbi Yehuda holds dayat tefillah ba'achrona. All she has to do is wait the number of days she needs to wait until we can be sure she's finished with all of this. Then she tovels once at the end. What does that show you? He doesn't hold the tefillah b'zmana mitzvah. That's Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. That must be the Rabbi Yossi by us who holds the tefillah b'zmana that must be the Rabbi Yossi who holds in the Zav Zava, that one about Yom Kippur. The tefillah b'zmana is not a mitzvah, but our Rabbi Yossi is a different Rabbi Yossi, and he could still hold, and that finishes our discussion with that whole thing that we thought that the whole writing the name of God there was a concern. Maybe it'll get wiped out, and it's grama. No, it has nothing to do with grama indirect. No, that's not the issue. The issue has to do with, can the body see where it's written the name of God, see the body naked? How much do we have to be concerned, right? Should we try to find some sort of read, or if it's an issue that it's going to push off our mikvah, then maybe we can't, because right, just put your hand over it and don't worry about it, because tefillah b'zman is a mitzvah and we don't want you to push off the tefillah. Okay, that's Rabbi Yossi versus Tanakam, who thinks not, in which case it has nothing to do with our Rabbi Yossi. That was the Gram Kiboy Rabbi Yossi. We have 3 different opinions of Rabbi Yossi. One we said isn't Rabbi Yossi at all, a different Rabbi Yossi, and the other 2 have nothing to do with each other. And with that, we're resolved and we can move on to a new Mishnah. With that, Nochri Shabbat Chabot, famous issue called Amira La'akum. Are you allowed to tell a non-Jew to do malacha? Okay, so what's the issue here, right? We know that Amira La'akum is forbidden. You're not allowed to tell a non-Jew to do malacha. So what if a Nochri comes to help you with your fire? So Nochri Shabbat Chabot, what can you do? So the Mishnah tells you, Ein omrim lo kabeh. You can't tell him, help me put out the fire, right? Your house is burning down, again, in assuming that it's not a danger, and a non-Jew walks by, you can't say to him, help me put out the fire, because that's what we call Amira La'akum. Okay, now, before we even move on, I want to go into a few different opinions, and in fact, Rashi in different places says different things about this. In one place in Avodah Zarah, he says, it comes from, why is Amira La'akum a problem? Because it comes from Vidaber Davar. If you remember, we learned a few days ago, your speech on Shabbat has to be different than your speech on a regular day, and therefore, you can't speak in a way and tell a non-Jew to do work for you on Shabbat. In a different place in Avodah Zarah, and also further on in Shabbat, he explains that the reason why you can't tell a Nochri to do something for you is because the Nochri becomes your messenger. And you can't ask someone to be your messenger to do something that you yourself can't do on Shabbat. Now, even though normally we say, Ein shlichut leNochri, there is no concept of shlichut by a non-Jew. If you ask a non-Jew to do something for you, it's not considered that he's doing it for you. But in this case, the rabbis were machmir and said, well, we don't want you doing this, okay? So we didn't have shlichut. There's another issue, which is that in a case of hefsed, we're going to have a big financial loss, which is what's going on here. Normally, we actually do permit Amira La'akum, okay? So normally, if it's going to be a real big loss, then you're allowed to tell a non-Jew to do it. In this case, though, they're machmir. For what reason? Same reason we keep going back to, because we're worried that if you start telling him to put out your fire, you'll go help him put out the fire because you're concerned about your possessions being burned, and therefore we don't allow it. The other thing they say, though, is you also can't say to him, or you don't it's really here, not that you can't, but you don't need to say al tichabeh. Let's say he starts putting out your fire, you don't have to stop him, okay? So if your neighbor decides to be nice to you, starts putting out your fire, you can just be quiet. Say, okay, great, go for it. Mipnei, why is this? She'ein shvitato alehen. We learned already that your animals have to rest on Shabbat. Right? There was a debate about your kelim, there's shvitat kelim or not. We hold you there isn't, but your children, right, can't work, your servants. But there's no, it's not forbidden anywhere for a non-Jew to do work on Shabbat. So therefore, you can let him do work for you on Shabbat in this way, if he wants to put out your fire. From here, we're going to get into tomorrow's daf, into all sorts of things if a non-Jew does for you. Can you benefit from it or not? Okay, this is a case where you just don't have to stop him. Okay, and this is, again, normally you're not really allowed to benefit from halacha that a non-Jew does on Shabbat. This is a very complicated sugya, and I'll just kind of preface it by saying there's a lot of different opinions about how to understand everything, and it's very complicated in halacha. The whole Goy Shel Shabbat, okay, there's been books written about it. Jacob Katz wrote a whole book about it, the history of it. Goy Shel Shabbat and how it went throughout the generations, because people really did use Shabbos goys, right? And how is it done? And there's a lot of debates about it, and part of it comes from lack of, not enough details given us in the sugyas, as usual, right? They give cases, and then you have to try to learn from the cases the general rules. But in this case, we're going to say, since, again, because bahul al mamono, so in this case, again, we're always worried you're going to put it out, which works in both ways. Number one, you can't tell him go put it out because you might join him. On the other hand, if he starts putting it out, you can leave him because otherwise maybe you'll come to put it out yourself. What about a katan? Aval katan sheba lechabod. Now, he's different from a non-Jew. If your kid, your little kid who's not bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah age, decides to start putting out the fire, ein shomin lo. You don't allow them to do it. Mipnei shvitato alehen. You're commanded to stop your kids from doing malacha on Shabbat. So therefore, you basically can't let your kids do this for you. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. The Gemara starts off now. Amar Rabbi Aimie, b'dzleika hitiru lomar, kol ha'mechabe ino mafsid. Now, the Mishnah didn't talk about this case, but they say, this is what we call hinting. Right? When it comes to a fire, we allow you to say, anyone who wants to put out the fire is not going to lose out. Okay, this means, right, basically you're saying, I'll be happy to pay you if you put out my fire. But you're not saying it directly, and they specifically allow this in a case of a fire, again, so that you don't come to put out the fire. So now they say, Nema Mesayale, maybe this can be supported from our Mishnah. So what does it tell you here? You can't tell him put it out. From there you can infer, you just can't say put it out. But you can say something less than that, which would be anyone who puts it out will not be at a loss, right? Will not lose out. So then they say, no, you can't necessarily prove it from the Mishnah because Aimie Seifa. Look at the end of the Mishnah. It says, it's really not the end of the Mishnah, it's the next words. Al tichabeh, right? So then it says, Al tichabeh lo amrin alei, v'chol ha'mechabeh eino mafsid nami lo amrin alei. So then they say, it sounds like, don't put it out, you can't say, right? Which would seem to imply, kol ha'mechabeh eino mafsid, also you don't say. Because if you don't say al tichabeh, then, right, the assumption here is, if you don't say, one second, if you don't say al tichabeh, then, right, you don't have to stop him, which would sound like you also can't say, right, if you don't stop him from you don't have to say, don't put it out, it sounds like you can't say, kol ha'mechabeh eino mafsid, because if you could say that, it would have said that instead of al tichabeh. So they would have said something that's more of a chidush. Okay, it's more of a chiddush to say that you can't say that. So therefore, they would say, since it doesn't say that in the Mishnah, you would think you can't say that, and therefore, we can't infer anything from the Mishnah. So it goes either way because again, the Mishnah brings two extremes. It doesn't talk about the middle case. It does not clear where the middle case would fall. Tanu Rabbanan. Now we're going to hear a story. Funny, we just mentioned shichin. There was something about from the material, the klei cheres in Beit Shichin, if you remember. So now we mention it again. In the Chatzer of Yosef and Simai in Shichin, there was a fire that broke out. And we're going to hear a few things about Yosef and Simai. Bao Anshe Gisra Shel Tzipori, the local, whether it was the army or some important people from Tzipori, came lechabot, okay, these non-Jews. Why? He took care of the money of the king. He was in charge of the king's money. So therefore, the king sent people to help him out. He didn't allow them to put out his fire. Now, this is interesting because this seems to go against the Mishnah. Okay? There was something I saw here. 1 second, I just want to remember. Right. I forgot. Okay, I looked up a reason. I forgot now what it was. The Rashba says something, but I forgot now what his reason is. He tried to explain why Rabbi Yosef, it's a little bit strange why he didn't let them do it. I now forgot the reason. Maybe I'll try to look it up again for tomorrow. But that's what happens on Shabbat when I look things up and I don't write them down. But anyway, there was a reason he tried to explain and justify his behavior because theoretically, according to the Mishnah, this should have been allowed. And in fact, what happened? So, Nasalo nes v'yardug shamim v'chibu. Okay, so what happened? A miracle happened. Rain started pouring down. It put out his fire. So theoretically, these non-Jews came. He shouldn't have stopped them. He should have let them, according to the Mishnah, but he stopped them, and a miracle happened, and it all went out. La'erev shiger l'chol echad mehem shtei slaim. That night, he sent everybody 2 slaim, and he paid them, even though they didn't even do anything. He went and paid them for their work. And the head of all those people, he sent 50 slaim. He sent a lot of money. He obviously was a wealthy guy, and he sent the money for actually just for coming, for being nice and coming to put out the fire. Now you can imagine what the rabbis did. Now this is interesting. You might think, oh, he was machmir. This is a good thing. Now the rabbis weren't very happy with what he did. Amru lo hayat tzarich lekach. What was he doing? He didn't need to do this. They certainly didn't want anyone learning an example from here because they felt like people should allow, you see here, their interest. They think, obviously they struggled with the fact that you can't put out a fire on Shabbat, and if your non-Jewish neighbors are going to come, of course you should let them. So, lo hayat tzarich lekach sharei shaninu. So basically this is allowed, and the rabbi said, we don't know why you did what you did. Now we're going back to the line about the katan. Can one infer from this Mishnah that if a young child is eating nivelot, is eating non-kosher food, the Beit Din has to stop him? Now this is a debate that comes up in another sugya, and it's not so clear-cut. And what they're saying is, why wouldn't we just say that from our Mishnah, if our Mishnah says we have to stop a katan who's going to put out the fire, wouldn't then it be clear that we would stop a katan from eating the velot? That the Beit Din has to come in, they see some kid who's not chayav and mitzvot yet, eating non-kosher food, they have to stop him. And it seems like it's not so clear that that's necessarily the case. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, oh, don't think that's a problem, because bekatano selidat aviv. In our case, what's the issue? The katan is doing it because the father wants him to put out the fire. So you can't have a katan do something for you when it's clear he's doing it for the father. But if the katan is just eating on his own volition and he eats nevelot, that's not connected. He's not doing it al da'at aviv. And therefore, you let him be. The Beit Din doesn't have to come in and stop him from doing it. Or not necessarily anyway. So then they say, well, if that's the case, that he's doing it al da'at aviv, and that's why we stop him, well, let's go back to the Nochri case. Likewise, for a non-Jew, he's doing it, and if you're going to say that the Mishnah with the katan is talking about, he's doing it for his father, because his father wants him to put it out. Likewise, the non-Jew is doing it for the Jew. So why do we stop the katan, because he's doing it for the Jew, but we don't stop the Nochri who's clearly doing it for the Jew? So they say, and this is an interesting thing we say in general, difference between a katan and a gadol, Nochri l'date de nafshe avid. And maybe this is saying something broader about people. Nobody ever does something fully for somebody else only. The Nochri is doing it from his own volition. It's not because anyone told him to do it. And even though he's helping me, let's say I have a fire in my house, and the non-Jew is helping me, the Nochri is probably helping me so that I will help him with something in the future, right? The child is only doing it because the father wants it done, or the mother, or whatever it might be. But the non-Jew, now usually the issue here is also the child doesn't have da'at halachically. We consider a child underage as not having enough intelligence. So the child doesn't do anything on their own. They do it because the parents want it. So therefore, now it's a little different because in the Nevela, we assume they're doing it for themselves, but here it's doing something that affects me. and I'm the grown-up. So therefore, we assume it's doing it al da'at atzmi. But the non-Jew is doing it with his own mind. And that means that it's kind of like the same idea of ein shliach lidvar avera. Okay? Right? The classic case, what does that mean? It's a very important thing. But I see people are asking about what about the safety of the child? Maybe that's an issue. Again, it seems all these fires are not hazards, fire hazards somehow. But yeah, it would be another good reason, but I don't think that's the reason why. Here they're talking from a purely halachic standpoint. So there's a concept, if I tell you to do a sin for me, I go tell you, steal something for me, and you steal it, normally we say, shlichut, you're doing it for me. In this case, you're doing it for yourself. Okay, the classic is when we were kids, if someone told you jump off the Empire State Building, would you do it, right? Of course not, right? You have your own mind. Just because somebody told you doesn't mean that you should do it. So since you have your own mind and someone tells you to do something forbidden, you're responsible for doing it and not the person who told you. Even though generally in halacha there is a concept of shlichut. So likewise here we're going to say the nochri is doing it for himself, for his own sake. There's no such thing as the nochri doing it for me, even though it really is somewhat for me. New Mishnah. From here, we're going to start with fire, but it's really going to have to do with muktzah, and we're going to move back into muktzah for a little bit. Kofin ka'aral gabaner, which is a bit of an intro to the next parak, which is going to start soon on Daf Kuf Kaf Bet. And tomorrow's Daf, we're going to start the new Mishnah, which is all about muktzah. Kofin ka'aral gabaner, and we actually saw this before, b'shvil shelo techos b'kora. If there's a candle and you're worried that it's going to get to the beams in the ceiling, you're allowed to cover it so that it doesn't start a fire. The also ashal katan, you can put, right? Normally we learn you're not allowed to carry a kli for something that's muktzah. Okay, you can't service or take care of something that's muktzah. But in this case, since you're worried about a fire breaking out, you're allowed to do that. The also ashal katan, you can put on feces of a young child. We'll talk about what this means. There's going to be a whole debate about what exactly this line means. You're allowed to cover it. Okay, and this is usually because we say it's ma'us, it's disgusting. Although we'll see that maybe there's something else going on here. Va'alakav shelo tishach, and on a scorpion, you can put a kli on top of a scorpion to prevent it from biting you. Shelo tishach, so it doesn't bite you. By the way, if you want to talk about current events in the news, first of all, I saw going around a lot last week, was that 2 weeks ago there was a fire and a Sefer Torah was saved from a fire. It's a whole relevant to what we're learning. And when I looked at the news last night, I saw that there was a woman bitten by a scorpion over Shabbat and bitten by a snake in Israel. So first of all, be careful. Apparently there's a lot of snakes out there. I've been hearing about it in general. And specifically, it was interesting because it's all over the daf today about killing snakes and scorpions on Shabbat. This happened specifically on Shabbat. So the issue of the scorpion, first of all, the concern is you're trapping the scorpion, right? And you're maybe causing it, and then we're going to talk about what even killing it. Okay, but again, if you remember, we talked about that this is a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, because when you trap animals, you trap them because you want the animal. Remember, that's why they did it. In this case, you're trapping the animal not because you want the animal, it's because you don't want the animal. You want it not to bother you. So you're trapping it for that reason. That already makes it malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. And if it's dangerous, right now, malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is still forbidden from Torah law. By Rabbi Shimon, it's only forbidden by rabbinic law. But if it's dangerous, then we're going to allow you to do it. And then the question is going to be not only capturing, but killing, right, which is shochet. Are you allowed to kill them or not? Which ones are you allowed to kill? Which ones not? We're going to get into that all today. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Now the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yehuda says, Maaseh ba'alefnei Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ba'arev, in the city of Arev, which according to Steinsaltz, which is quoted in the Koran, right, the Koran is Steinsaltz. So it says there that he lived in Arev for 18 years, and he was only asked 2 halachic questions the whole time he was there. One was this, and one was another one that's going to come up later in Shabbat. V'amar chosheshani lo mechatat. I actually think, it's unclear, was this that there was a scorpion that was going to bite someone, and he says, I think it might actually be asher da'oraita. Okay, and then the question is, why does he think that when it seems clear from the Mishnah that it's okay? Some people think maybe the case was different, we don't know what the case was. It's unclear exactly what this line is about. Now we're going to have another story. We have a bunch of stories today and a bunch of interesting things. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Rav Hanan bar Rava, these three rabbis, iklu lebei Iving demin Nishikaya. They went to Iving's house in Nishikaya. The Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, aitule poraita. So there were 3 people, okay? The first, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba got beds, and the third one, Rav Hanan bar Rava, didn't get a bed. You can imagine, okay, the Rav Hanan bar Rava, lo aitule. So he was pretty pissed off. Came to Iving's house, didn't get a bed. Wasn't very happy. Next thing that happens is, he sees Iving teaching his son our Mishnah. And what does he say? If you remember, we talked about the tsoah shel katan. And in our Mishnah, it says, you can put a bowl on top of tsoah shel katan. So what was he teaching his son? Tsoah shel katan mipnei katan. You can put it on top of the feces of a child because of a child, meaning, right, a child left his feces there, and then we're worried that what do kids do? They touch everything. This, by the way, comes up in a bunch of sugyas. It comes up in sugya about dough, where there's challah in it, and maybe the kid touched it and made it tameh because kids touch everything, and their hands carry all sorts of things. So there's this concept that kids touch everything, as we all know, and therefore we're worried that the kid might touch it. It'll be disgusting. So you're allowed to cover it. That's what he was teaching his son. Amar Le, now Rav Chanan bar Rava, who was kind of annoyed at the Iving for not giving him a bed, says to him the following: Iving shatya matne shtuta libnei. The stupid Iving is teaching stupid things to his son. Okay? In other words, your way of reading the Mishnah is totally wrong. Why? If the Mishnah is talking about tsoah shel katan, which actually sounded like that's what the Mishnah was talking about, that's not muktzah at all. Why? Because you could feed it to a dog. A dog would eat that. The dog would eat it. That means it's not muktzah. And if you want to say maybe there's a separate problem, maybe this tsoah, this is creative, is nolad, because it didn't exist before Shabbat. Something that was created on Shabbat, and maybe because of that it's muktzah, but it's not. Why not? Tanya, it says in the following braita, if you have streams that are bringing water, right, the water is constantly moving. Let's say the water that's in front of me today, before Shabbat started, was outside of my tchum. But since the water is constantly streaming, and since it's obvious that the water is going to stream toward me, that the water that's outside of my 2,000 amma that I'm allowed to be in on Shabbat is going to end up in my tchum on Shabbat, therefore it's allowed, okay? All those things, I can take that water to wherever I'm allowed to walk. That's raglei kol adam, wherever I can walk, I can bring that water. So therefore, the tsoah is the same thing, since the child is clearly going to have tsoah on Shabbat, right? He'll go to the bathroom on Shabbat. Therefore, it's something that's so obvious that's going to happen. Therefore, it's not nolad. Okay, it's interesting. Nobody talks about what if the kid's constipated, right? And then you wouldn't. But anyway, the assumption is that will happen. Something that regularly comes. So says to him, Avin, so how do you read the Mishnah then? Aimie, so he says, I would read it like this. It's the feces from the roosters because of a young child. Meaning, rooster feces, nobody eats. Even a dog wouldn't eat it. Therefore, it's muktzah. And we don't want the child playing with it. So we're allowed to cover it on Shabbat. But then the question is asked, but shouldn't you be able to move this? Because there's a halacha. This is what I said in the beginning. When something is disgusting, we allow you to move it because it's disgusting to have this in your face on Shabbat. So if you end up with the feces from the Goalie, so it's like a geref shara'i. A geref shara'i is a vessel in which people defecated, okay? Or they used it for animals or people, whatever it is. It has feces in it, but it's a kli. So now they're going to say, this is just like you can move the utensil that's full of feces. Therefore, you can also move the feces itself. And if you want to say geref shara'i agav mana'im, iu gufayulo. And if you want to say, well, maybe the geref shara'i, this utensil is only allowed because it's a utensil. You're not actually moving, you are moving the feces, but you're moving it because it's in a utensil. We allow you to, it's a little bit removed. We're moving a utensil with it in it, but since it's a utensil, we allow you to move it, but it itself would not be allowed to be moved. But you can't say that because we're going to show something else that's disgusting, that we allow you to move it with your own hands and not necessarily just in a vessel. So there was a case of a mouse. He found it mixed up in his spices. Right? This happens sometimes you find bugs in your stuff. So he found a mouse. Pick it up. He said to them, right? He didn't have to do it himself. He said, pick it up with its tail and get rid of it. So what do you see? They didn't use it with a utensil. So therefore, if it's so'av tarnagolim and you want to move it because of the katan, you should be allowed to move it itself. And our Mishnah then doesn't make any sense because our Mishnah said, bring a utensil and cover it. Bringing a utensil and covering it is only when you have no choice, right? When you can't move it with your hands. So therefore, we're stuck. So the Gemara answers, be'ashpa, okay? It must have been in a garbage dump. Since it's in a garbage dump, well, it's not disgusting anymore because it's in a garbage dump. It's not bothering you. It's not like in the middle of your house. So it's in a garbage dump. So that's why you just cover it. And then the Gemara asks, Katan ba'ashpa, my ba'ile. What's the kid doing in a garbage dump? Kids don't go play in garbage dumps. That doesn't make any sense. So can't be. And why would you need to cover it? It's in the garbage. So now the answer, bechatzer. Okay, forget that. It's not in a garbage dump. It's in your courtyard. If it's in your house, it's disgusting and we don't let you move it. So all you could do is cover it. If it, I'm sorry, if I did say that wrong. If it's in your house, you can move it because it's disgusting. If it's in your courtyard, well, you're not hanging out so much in your courtyard. So we just allow you to cover it. You can't actually move it. And then you're still worried the kid might get to it while it's in your courtyard. So now the Gemara says, Chatzer nami graf shel be'ihu. Even if it's in your courtyard, you walk into your courtyard all the time, it's disgusting, you should be allowed to move it. A graf shel be'i, this bowl where you have all the feces in it, is allowed to be moved, and therefore even the tzoav tarnagolim should be allowed to be moved because it's disgusting. So what's the answer? Well, let's take the last two answers and combine them. Be'ashpa shebechatzer. If you have a garbage in your chatzer, where right, the garbage dump that's outside your property already, we're not so worried the kid's going to get in there. There's no reason to cover it up. But if you have, right, just like we have garbage, we have a garbage can in our house, and then we have the dumpster outside, and then we have there where it goes to the garbage dump. So if it's in this in between, and you have some sort of, it's not like our dumpsters where they're closed, but they must have some sort of garbage in their courtyard. And if you put the garbage there, the kid might, right? Often kids go into even disgusting garbage. It definitely happens. So if it's in the garbage in your chatzer, it's no longer like a graf shel be'i that we allow you to move it because it's in the garbage. On the other hand, you might not want the kids to get into it, so you can cover it up with a kli. And that's what the Mishnah is telling you. So in the end, when it says so ashal katan, it means so av tarnagolim for a katan. That's how Rav Hanan bar Rava reads the Mishnah. Okay, and that was in the context of the story of when he came to Avin's house, and Avin didn't give him a bed, and then he didn't like Avin's explanation of the Mishnah, and he started screaming at him and insulting him. They have interesting interactions between people in today's daf. Now we're moving on to the next case about the scorpion, so it doesn't bite. You're allowed to cover it. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and here we're taking it one step farther. As I said, kol hamizikim neheragim b'Shabbat. Anything that's dangerous, one is allowed to kill on Shabbat. Matif Rav Yosef says, but wait, the following source contradicts that. It says in the Braita, Chamisha neheragim b'Shabbat ve'elu hein. There's 5 things that can be killed on Shabbat, and these are them, meaning not all mazikin, only 5 of them. Which 5? So the zvuv sheb eretz Mitzrayim. Now each one, right? There's a particular zvuv, a bee in or a fly of Mitzrayim. That's dangerous. Some sort of bug. Vitzirah shebeninvei, a hornet, I think, in Ninveh, and akrav shebechadayev, a scorpion in Chadayev. Nachash sheberetz Israel. In Israel, there's dangerous snakes. V'kelev shoteh b'chol makom, and a wild dog everywhere. Okay, again, the Gemara is against their dogs. Right? The dogs are always the evil, and maybe because dogs carry rabies or something, and they were dangerous, so they view dogs as very dangerous, and therefore any dog can be killed. So, mani. Now, the question is, who does this go according to? Ilema Rabbi Yehuda, again, we keep getting back to malacha sheina tzricha legufa. To kill an animal for the purposes of preventing it from hurting you is only, or preventing it from anything, is only malacha sheina tzricha legufa. Because again, as I said earlier, when we kill these animals, just like when we hunt them, we're hunting them to kill them. So it's all the same thing. The reason why they did it was because they wanted the hide of the animal or the meat of the animal. In this case, that's not what you're interested in. So therefore, it's malacha sheina tzricha legufa. If you say it's Rabbi Yehuda, ha'amar malacha sheina tzricha legufa chayav aleh, he's going to hold anyway. It's doraita. Elalav Rabbi Shimon. It must be Rabbi Shimon. And then Rabbi Shimon's telling you. Remember, Rabbi Shimon still says it's patur aval asur. Okay, it's forbidden from the rabbis. So now, according to Rabbi Shimon, we're going to say, Hanehu deshare achrine lo. Therefore, since it's forbidden by the rabbis, we're only going to allow those 5. Well, once we say that, how are we going to explain Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi who says we could kill them all? We can't say, oh, it's like Rabbi Shimon, and then that disagrees with the Tanaitic source. Remember, he's an Amora. He can't disagree with the Tana. So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Uman, and if we could easily say one is Rabbi Yehuda and one is Rabbi Shimon, that would work. But it seems like neither of these are Rabbi Yehuda because Rabbi Yehuda says it's all Asher Midoraita. So only if it's Asher Dorabanan are we going to find some sort of leniency. Of course, we're going to see maybe it's not true because maybe even Rabbi Yehuda will say if these are dangerous, well then even Rabbi Yehuda will allow it. Because even if it's Asher Doraita, if they're going to kill you, then we'll allow it. So anyway, we'll get there soon. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Uman lemalan dahamitaatztahi, dilma mishabashtahi. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, who says your version of the Braita, Rabbi Yosef, is right? Maybe you're quoting some Braita that's a mistaken Braita. Okay, what does this mean? So Rashi tells us that any Braita that doesn't appear in the Tosefta, which is attributed to Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yashaya, usually Rabbi Chia, but he says also Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yashaya. Maybe Rabbi Yashaya had his own set of Braitot. If it's not there and it's not there, then we can claim that it was basically a messed up Braita. In other words, the ones that were good got put into books, either the Mishnah or the Tosefta or collections of rabbis. But this one, you're pulling out of left field. Maybe it's wrong. So Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef obviously doesn't like that he said he brought an incorrect Braita. So Rav Yosef comes and explains. Ana matnin ala. I actually learned this Braita, and I think it's a valid Braita. Ve'otvin ala, and I brought it as a question of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. And in fact, ana mitaritzna la. I'm actually going to bring an answer for Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, what he could say. Biratzu acharav b'divrei akol. He said that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said you could kill any mizikim. He was talking about, number one, if they're pursuing you, and number two, it then becomes even Rabbi Yehuda, who thinks it's forbidden midoraita, will allow it. That's what I said before. Once it's pikuach nefesh, and you might die from it, of course we're going to allow it. Now we're going to have another story. And then the Braita that Rav Yosef brought, where it said only 5 of them, that's if they're not pursuing you, you're allowed to kill them anyway, because maybe they'll pursue you. Okay? Tana kamei de Rava. A Tana brought a Braita in front of Rava bar Rav Huna, the son of Rav Huna. This is important because you'll see that Rav Huna in a minute is going to disagree with Rava. This is a different approach. If you kill snakes and scorpions on Shabbat, the Hasidim are not happy with you. So this is, someone brings a Braita in front of Rava, and Rava reacts and says, Amar lev, otan Hasidim, ein roch chachamim, nochem ehen. The rabbis aren't going to be very happy with those Hasidim who are upset with the people who kill them. Meaning, the rabbis think you're allowed to kill them. Okay? So, upliga de Rav Huna. And in fact, he disagrees with Rav Huna, his father, and here's a great line. De Rav Huna chazi lahu gavra. He found a person, de kakatil zibura, who was killing a bee. And Rav Huna wasn't happy that the guy was killing the bee. And what does he say to him? Amarle, shlamintinu lekulu. Did you kill all the bees? In other words, what do you think you're gaining by killing this bee? There's another 100 bees out there. You might kill this bee, but another one's going to come. So you're not really doing anything, and therefore you shouldn't do this on Shabbat. Okay, so he didn't like that people were killing bees because he said it's pointless, right? What's it going to gain you? It's just going to be more bees. I think of when I was a kid and in the sukkah, always there were tons of bees, and people would try to kill them. And could you kill them? Can you not kill them? Right? So he's basically saying, what's the point of killing them? Another bee is going to come a minute later. Tanu Rabbanan. And by the way, that went against Rava, because Rava, his son, thought that you could kill nechashim and akrabim, and clearly probably also dvorim, anything that's, potentially dangerous. But his father didn't think so. That's what the Gemara is telling us. Tanu Rabbanan, nizdamnu lo nechashim va'akrabim, if snakes and scorpions appear, haragan, if you manage to kill them, now they're going to, this is kind of Gemara where this is a sign for something. If you killed it, it's clear that they must have been pursuing you and you succeeded in killing them. Lo haragan, if you didn't succeed in killing them and yet you didn't get killed, it clearly must have been pursuing you. But you must have been saved from God. So you didn't manage to save yourself, but God must have come in and saved you. That's only if they rubbed up against you. If they didn't rub up against you, then you can't see it as a sign for anything. If they rubbed up against you, then it's a sign that a miracle happened to you. Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana, Pamachat nafalacha bebeit midrash. Okay, one day I was in the Beit Midrash, a snake fell in the Beit Midrash. Va'amad niyuti echav harago. A person from Nayot got up and killed it. Amar Rabbi Pagabo kayotzebo. Okay, it found its mate. You could say something like that. Okay, meaning, okay, now what does this mean exactly? Was this a positive statement or a negative? So that's what the Gemara is going to ask. Ibailu, Pagabo kayotzebo dishapir avid. Does that mean he met his match, meaning someone who was stronger than he was? Right, is a positive thing. Oh, lo. Or does it mean he found his match, meaning the guy who killed the snake is like a snake? That's not a positive thing. So let's try to learn it from here. Now they're going to learn it from Rabbi Yana, who was a student of Rabbi, and they're going to assume if Rabbi said that and his student said this, it must be that his student said it because of Rebbe. Rabbi Abba Bered, Rav Chia bar Abba, Rabbi Zera, Havuyatvu, Akila, Debe, Rabbi Yanai. They were sitting by the house of Rabbi Yanai. I think Akila is the Chatzer, the courtyard of Rabbi Yanai. Nafik Milta mi Benayu. They were talking among them. By mi name Rabbi Yanai. They asked Rabbi Yanai, Ma'ula arog nechashim ba'akrabim b'Shabbat. Can you kill them on Shabbat? Now again, depending on what Rebbe held, this is going to affect Rabbi Yanai. Amar Lahu, Sirani oreg. I would kill a wasp. Nachash va'akrav lo kol sheken. Am I not going to kill a snake and a scorpion? Meaning it's allowed. So what do you see? That Rebbe must have said it in a positive way. But now the Gemara says not necessarily. Dilma lefi tumo. Maybe he meant only if you kill it by stepping on it. Why is stepping on it different? Because stepping on it looks like, and there's a debate about whether you killed it as you were walking and you weren't even trying to kill it, or you were trying to kill it by walking and trampling on it, but because you were doing it in a natural way of walking, it doesn't look like you're actively killing it. Whereas this guy in the Beit Midrash killed it with his hands, it sounds like, or some other way, where he went actively and did it, and not just in a way of walking. Okay, and now where do we see that lefi tumo is an issue? Ta'amar Rav Yehuda, rok dorso lefi tumo. If there's saliva on the ground, you can step on it and kind of smooth out the ground, even though you're smoothing the ground, but you can do it if it's in the way that you're walking. Ta'amar Rav Sheshet, nachash dorso lefi tumo. You can trample on a snake as you're walking. V'amar Rav Katina, akrab dorso lefi tumo. You could do it with a scorpion. So here you see that maybe that was all because they were doing it lefi tumo. But to do it with your hands isn't allowed, in which case Rav maybe really wasn't so Rebbe wasn't so happy with the student who did it. Okay, we're going to end with another story. Abba Bar Marta, Duha Abba Bar Menyumi, he was called two different names. He owed money to the exilarch. Now the exilarch, we're going to see in a lot of stories, has thugs who basically are his bullies, and they bully people around. So they brought him in to the Reish Galuta's house and they start torturing him, because he didn't give them the money back. Maybe it was Shabbat, or maybe it wasn't, but this next part of the story clearly happened on Shabbat. Habashade roka. There was saliva on the ground. Some people say that it couldn't be they had him try to pay back the money on Shabbat, and they were beating him up on Shabbat. It must be they beat him up some other time, and then they kept him hostage in the house. So one day there was saliva on the ground on Shabbat. Amar lehu reish galuta aite mani schifu elabe. Put a utensil on top of it. Okay, cover it up because it's disgusting. Amar lehu lo tzrichi tu hachi. So he says to him, you don't really need to do that. You can trample on it. Amar Rav Yehuda, rok dorso lefi tumo. You can step on it, and it'll just smooth out, and it'll be dissolved into the ground. So what's the reaction of the Reish Galuta? Amar le tzurva me rabbananu shavkuhu. This guy is a Talmid Chacham. Wow, I didn't realize you're a Talmid Chacham. Leave him alone. Okay, first of all, it's very interesting, right? He has these thugs. He doesn't really care about anything, but yet, if Talmidei Chachamim, he had this reverence toward them. So we said, if you're a Talmid Chacham, leave him alone and stop torturing him because he hasn't paid us back the money. Okay, in any case, that was just to prove this issue of dorso lefi tumo, and we're going to get back tomorrow, and therefore it's not clear whether Rebbe meant it in a positive way or a negative way, and then we're going to move on. They don't really have an answer to other issues about being muktzah. We're going to talk about candelabras, which actually we saw this whole sugya before in a different context in Shabbat, and with that we'll finish for today. Have a good day, everybody.